Hello, welcome back to my haunted library. It's Regina. Today I am doing a Authortube tag. So this tag was created by Strip Cover Lit, and I will link his channel below. Okay, so question number one. Do you have a sweetheart novel, short story, poetry project? A project that turned you into a serious writer, in quotes. Not so sure about being a serious writer, but I started taking writing seriously about 10 years ago. I had written most of my life, like starting when I was a teen, like short stories and plays and unfinished and unpublished novels. But my first project that I guess I took really seriously was a screenplay called Unmasked that I then turned into a novel, Unmasked. And the reason I took it seriously is that it was the first thing I ever really worked on in depth. You know, like I wrote the screenplay, I wrote several drafts, I workshopped it, I had friends over and we read it and I got feedback from them, and then I made it into a novel, and you know, I really worked hard on it, and it really makes me happy when people read it and like it, and it's my first novel. I'm sure I, you know, made some mistakes. I know I did. I probably have some bad writing in it, but at least I did finish it. Now I haven't gone back and reread it because I don't have that strong a stomach, but you know, people are reading it still and liking it, so that makes me feel good. Question number two, do you ever plan to work on a series length project? Well, I already have. My YA series, The Ghost of Dark Hollow, was the first one. It's called The Dark Hollow Chronicles. I'll link it below. Yeah, I started this project on Wattpad, and it just grew from there, and I am currently very close to finishing book 4, and that's the end of the series. So yes, I did that, and it took me it'll be 2 years this August, so less than 2 years, you know, probably 250,000 words or more in a cohesive story. I'm very proud of that. I actually owe a lot to Wattpad for that, because that kind of just spurred me on. My readers were always like, when are you going to update? And I was like, okay. And I just started like doing a chapter a day, and it does add up. I'm starting a new one, a new series on Wattpad this summer. Okay. Thoughts on mixed form projects, short stories that contain poems, novels, and that contain short stories. Oh, I'm all for that. I like when like Alice in Wonderland has, like, you know, songs in it and poems, and Lord of the Rings, of course, has songs in it and poems, and yeah, more. I love illustrated books. I love, you know, when Clive Barker puts some of his illustrations in books. I think it's all great. It's all creativity. I love all of it. Number 4. Where do you picture publishing in 10 years? Well, that's a good question. I kind of feel like books, they won't be obsolete like physical books, but they definitely seem like it will be a niche, you know, like vinyl. I was talking to a friend of mine recently, and he's been collecting and exploring old, like 35 millimeter film cameras and developing them himself. And we talked about the art of that. And then of course we started talking about vinyl and vinyl versus digital. I love vinyl, and it's like a whole experience. The experience of having the physical album that you can read the liner notes and look at the art. Like when I was a teenager, and we would look at, you know, at parties where you would be listening to Yes, and I was really into prog rock at the time, and you know, analyzing the cool cover art and stuff like that. I think that it will be a niche. I think books, collecting books, it already is a niche. I mean, there's a whole niche on BookTube, or with a lot of us who are collecting these old 80s paperbacks, the leather-bound books, the feel of a book, the experience of a book. I always, I do have a Kindle, but I always prefer the physical book over the Kindle. There's something that feels rushed about reading on Kindle, but And then you have to worry the battery's going to go down. You know, it's like it seems convenient because you can take it. It's a lot lighter than carrying a bunch of books with you, but then you have to worry about always like charging it up, and you know, I much prefer a book, but I do feel like it's going to become more and more of a niche, and I also think there's going to be more of like the Wattpad type of reading, people reading online. This is already happening. I think books in 10 years will be more and more digitalized, and more audiobooks. I think that's going to be a growing industry. And I like to put my books on audiobooks. I actually have a very good friend who has done professional audiobooks for like Dan Brown and stuff. So maybe I'll hire him to do Unmasked. If you could have one booktuber review your work, who would that be? Definitely Mr. Cameron Chaney. And Mr. Chaney, if you're watching, I will happily send you a copy of Unmasked or any of my other books for free. I'll send you a physical copy for your amazing library. Not to lay it on thick, but just from watching his reviews in the kinds of books that he likes, I think that he would dig my book. And this one and Black Magic and my new book that's coming out called Fashion Victims. I think he would like them. So, you know, just throwing it out there. All right, number 6. Writers' quarrels are things of legend. What author alive today would you want to spat with? Well, I hate getting into fights with people, but I would have to choose Mr. Clive Barker, but only if he's wearing black leather.
Come here, damn you, I want to touch you. Come to Daddy.
I find minds hugely sexy, conversation hugely erotic, and I always have.
Number 7. Have you ever been part of a writer's group? Yes, I did make several attempts, and it failed miserably. I had I think 2 or 3 times I started a workshop in my library for like local, it was screenwriters, not novelists or fiction writers. Maybe it would work better that way, but it was bad. It was bad. People showed up and then they just dropped out, and I don't know, it was kind of depressing. I'm always open to that idea, though. I'd want to, I've always wanted to join a writer's group. So if there are any out there, maybe we can do one online. Maybe that's the way to go, like just Skype it or something. It seemed hard for people to get together. And in my writer's group, we were doing screenplays, and we were attempting to write, I think, 10 pages a week for 10 weeks. And in the first 2 weeks, half the class had dropped out. It wasn't a class, you know, but no one wanted to do it. So I did finish my screenplay, though. So I was on task. I think that it's a lot of people want to write, and I don't mean to sound snarky here, but a lot of people want to write, but very few people actually will do it. Because it is not easy. It takes a certain level of commitment that you either have or you don't have. It's just like anything. If you want to be a marathon runner, you get up every morning and you run. If you want to be a writer, you get up every morning and you write, or some point of the day. It's a lot. You know, I've heard a lot of people, especially when I was doing screenplays. There's something about screenplays that, like, everyone has a screenplay in them or a good idea. And I would hear, oh, you know, I've got this really great idea for a screenplay. Do you want my idea so you can write it? And I'm like, no, I don't want your idea. That's your idea. I have my own ideas, but you know, you're the one that's got to write it. But it doesn't always work out that way. I think it's just really hard, and it takes a certain level of commitment, and not everyone has that. And that's no shade. I just mean it's just a fact. There's a lot of stuff that I wish I did that I don't do, believe me. All right, next. Do you have a favorite writer's craft book? I really like The War of Art by, is it Stephen Preston? If I missaid his name, I'll correct it. But I think it's Stephen Preston. I don't have it on my shelf. It's in my Kindle, which is buried here somewhere. I thought that was a really great book about not just writing, but it's just about art in general, and creativity in general, kind of getting off your butt and doing it. Again, the commitment is a big part of it. As far as like books on writing craft, I do have Stephen King on writing. I've read this twice. I think it's a really great book. I thought Steve Donahue's take on it was very interesting. Maybe not as a book on writing craft, but as just an entertaining book about, you know, it's really kind of an autobiography and about his relationship to the writing craft. And it's funny because I hear so many people quoting Stephen King about this thing of like, don't use, and it's really silly, don't use adverbs. I've heard that so many times. And yet when I was reading Pet Sematary, Stephen King used a lot of adverbs. In fact, gallivantly was one that came to mind that I was like, aha, gallivantly? Yeah, okay, that's one heck of an adverb. So there's a lot of bad advice about writing, and not using adverbs is one of them. I think what he means is don't overuse adverbs. And so that was one piece of craft advice I got from his book that he doesn't himself follow. And then the other one was the passive voice one, which I have been really guilty of. So that was actually helpful. So I'm trying to be very cognizant of when I'm using passive voice in my writing. So another writing craft book that I read just a few months ago, and this was really good. This is writing popular fiction by Dean Koontz. Check out that author photo on the back. This came out in 1974. Obviously, it's outdated, but as far as like writing, it gets into different genres like Gothic, which he wrote under pseudonym. Those little paperback Gothic romance, which I have a bunch of back there. And but I found, as far as like a book on craft, this book was really excellent. And he has another book around the same time about a writing craft book that is, for some reason, ridiculously expensive to buy used. And I found this one on 8 books, and it was not that expensive. This is really good. I would highly recommend this. Oh, is that it? Oh, okay, so that is it. So thanks for Strip Cover Lit, again, for doing this tag. And I'm not going to tag anyone just because I don't know too many Authortube people that probably haven't already done this tag. But if you're out there and you see this and you want to do it, please tag yourself and let me know when you put your video up, and I'll definitely watch it. So thanks again for Strip Cover Lit for this tag. It was fun to do. So until next time, thanks for stopping by my haunted library, and I'll see you soon. Bye.